What you're about to witness is the most arrogant display of entitlement ever captured in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. When this 32-year-old corporate attorney walked into court wearing a designer power suit and an expression that screamed, "I'm better than everyone here," she made the catastrophic mistake of treating traffic laws like suggestions for poor people. What happened next would not only destroy her smugness in real time, but teach her a lesson about respect and equality under the law that her expensive law degree somehow failed to provide, a lesson so devastating that it went viral and became required viewing in legal ethics classes across the country. This story shows us what happens when professional arrogance meets judicial wisdom. When someone mistakes their legal credentials for immunity from consequences, and when an attorney discovers that knowing the law and respecting the law are two completely different things. But before we dive into this epic takedown of privilege and condescension, less than 2% of you watching are actually subscribed. So please hit that subscribe button, because this story about a lawyer who thought she could outsmart a judge with 38 years of experience deserves to reach everyone who needs to understand that credentials don't make you above the rules, they make you more accountable to them. It's a humid Wednesday afternoon in late June, and Providence Municipal Court is handling its typical midweek docket of traffic violations and municipal infractions. The summer heat outside makes the courthouse feel even more oppressive, and the old air conditioning system struggles to keep up. Inside Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, the atmosphere is routine, a steady stream of nervous defendants, apologetic explanations, and the judge's characteristic patience in dealing with everyday people facing everyday problems. But in the next 20 minutes, this routine afternoon will become anything but ordinary. A lawyer who believes her bar certification makes her special is about to discover that Judge Caprio has dealt with thousands of attorneys over his career, and the ones who think they're above the rules are the ones who need the hardest lessons. At exactly 2:45 p.m., the courtroom doors swing open with the kind of purposeful energy that announces someone who believes they're more important than everyone else waiting. Through them strides Jessica Montgomery, a 32-year-old corporate attorney at one of Providence's most prestigious law firms. Jessica moves like she owns every room she enters, chin elevated, shoulders back, heels clicking authoritatively against the courthouse floor with each confident step. She's dressed in a charcoal gray designer suit that probably costs more than most of the other defendants make in a month. Her briefcase is Italian leather, her watch is Cartier, and her entire presentation screams success, power, and barely concealed contempt for having to be here at all. Her blonde hair is pulled back in a severe bun that matches her severe expression, the look of someone perpetually annoyed that the world doesn't move at the speed she demands. Jessica doesn't wait in the gallery area with the other defendants. She walks directly to the front of the courtroom, sets her briefcase down with a deliberate thud that draws everyone's attention, and stands with her arms crossed, tapping one expensive heel impatiently as if the entire court system is wasting her valuable time. What's most striking about Jessica isn't her expensive clothes or her obvious impatience. It's the expression on her face, a barely concealed smirk that suggests she finds this entire proceeding amusing, beneath her, and entirely unnecessary. This is a woman who has spent her entire adult life being told she's exceptional, and she clearly believes it. She checks her Apple Watch repeatedly, sighs loudly enough for others to hear, and makes no effort to hide her disdain for the process she's being forced to endure. Jessica is here because 3 weeks ago, she received a citation for running a red light while speeding through a school zone. The violation occurred at 3:15 p.m. on a Thursday peak dismissal time when children are leaving school. According to the police report, She was clocked at 48 miles per hour in a 20-mile-per-hour school zone and ran a red light while texting on her phone. The fine is serious $500 plus potential license suspension and mandatory traffic school. A typical defendant would be nervous, apologetic, hoping for leniency, but Jessica isn't here to apologize or show remorse. She's here because she believes that as an attorney, she can argue her way out of this citation using legal technicalities, intimidate the judge with her credentials, and walk out with nothing more than a slap on the wrist. She's already planned her argument, challenge the calibration of the speed detection device, question the officer's vantage point, cite obscure precedents about school zone signage requirements. She's done this mental exercise a dozen times in her head, and in every scenario, she wins. What Jessica doesn't realize is that she's about to face a judge who has seen every legal maneuver, heard every technical argument, and dealt with hundreds of lawyers who thought their law degree made them special. Judge Frank Caprio has 38 years of experience seeing through exactly this kind of professional arrogance, and he has zero tolerance for attorneys who believe the rules that apply to everyone else don't apply to them. The court clerk calls several cases before Jessica's, and with each one, her impatience becomes more visible. She rolls her eyes when an elderly man struggles to explain why he parked in a handicapped spot. She actually laughs, a quiet, condescending laugh, when a young mother tearfully explains she couldn't afford her parking tickets. Jessica types on her phone during these proceedings, completely disengaged from the human stories unfolding around her, treating the courtroom like a waiting room where she's forced to endure the mundane problems of ordinary people. Finally, the clerk calls her case, Jessica Montgomery. The clerk announces reading from the docket. Jessica picks up her briefcase and approaches the bench with the confidence of someone who's about to give a performance she's already rehearsed. She doesn't show any nervousness, doesn't display any humility, and maintains the same smirk that suggests she's about to educate everyone in this courtroom about how the law really works. Judge Caprio looks up from his paperwork with his characteristic patience, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. His kind eyes, which have seen every type of defendant imaginable, take in Jessica's appearance, her body language, her obvious contempt for the proceedings. Miss Montgomery, Judge Caprio begins, his voice carrying measured authority. You're charged with speeding in a school zone 48 miles per hour in a 20 zone running a red light and distracted driving. This occurred at 3:15 p.m. on June 8th near Washington Elementary School. How do you plead? Jessica's response immediately establishes that this case will be unlike anything most people in the courtroom have witnessed before. Your Honor, Jessica says, her voice dripping with professional condescension. Before I enter a plea, I'd like to address several significant procedural and evidentiary issues with this citation that I believe warrant immediate dismissal. Judge Caprio sets down his pen, never a positive sign for defendants who think they're about to lecture him. Miss Montgomery, I ask how you plead. We can discuss any issues you'd like to raise after you've entered your plea. Jessica's smirk widens. With all due respect, Your Honor, as a practicing attorney, I'm well aware of courtroom procedure. However, given the fundamental flaws in this citation, I believe we can save the court's valuable time by addressing these issues first. Judge Caprio removes his glasses slowly, giving Jessica his full attention. Miss Montgomery, are you an attorney? Yes, Your Honor. I'm a senior associate at Morrison, Wells, and Patterson, specializing in corporate mergers and acquisitions. I've been practicing law for 8 years. I see. And in those 8 years of practicing corporate law, how many traffic cases have you handled? Jessica hesitates, sensing a trap, but too arrogant to back down. This is my first traffic citation, Your Honor, but the legal principles are universal. due process, burden of proof, evidentiary standards. These apply whether we're discussing a merger agreement or a traffic ticket. The courtroom has gone very quiet. Other defendants, court officers, even the clerk are watching this exchange with rapt attention. Everyone senses that this lawyer is walking into something, but she's too confident to see it coming. "Miss Montgomery," Judge Caprio says, his voice remaining calm but carrying a new edge. "I'm going to ask you one more time. How do you plead to the charges?" Jessica squares her shoulders, clearly viewing this as the opening argument of her defense. "Your Honor, I plead not guilty on the grounds that the citation is fundamentally flawed. First, I question the calibration certification of the speed detection device used. Second, I dispute the officer's claimed vantage point given the intersection's geometry. Third, the school zone signage doesn't meet the statutory requirements for visibility under Rhode Island General Law 31141. And fourth, even if we accept the officer's testimony is accurate, which I don't, there's insufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that I was the driver of the vehicle in question." Judge Caprio nods slowly, as if carefully considering her arguments. "Miss Montgomery, that's quite an impressive list of objections. Tell me, did you prepare this defense before or after you ran the red light while texting and speeding through a school zone full of children?" Jessica's smirk falters for just a moment. "Your Honor, I'm simply exercising my right to challenge evidence that I believe is—" "Miss Montgomery," Judge Caprio interrupts, his voice becoming firmer. "I've been on this bench for 38 years. I presided over thousands of traffic cases. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that your arguments are not impressive legal reasoning. They're a smokescreen designed to avoid taking responsibility for endangering children's lives." Jessica's face flushes slightly. "Your Honor, I resent the implication that—" "Let me ask you something, Miss Montgomery." Judge Caprio leans forward. "When you were driving 48 miles per hour in a 20-mile-per-hour school zone, did you see the children leaving school?" Jessica hesitates. "I may have been focused on the road, Your Honor." "You may have been focused on the road, or, according to the officer's report, you were focused on your phone. Which is it?" "Your Honor, without proper foundation for that testimony, Miss Montgomery, answer the question. Were you texting while driving through a school zone?" Jessica's professional composure cracks slightly. "I may have glanced at my phone, Your Honor, but you glanced at your phone while driving nearly 50 miles per hour through a school zone during dismissal time while children were crossing the street. Is that correct?" Jessica shifts her weight, her earlier confidence beginning to waver. "Your Honor, I don't believe the circumstances were quite as dramatic as you're suggesting. The street appeared relatively clear, my reflexes are excellent, and I had complete control of my vehicle at all times." The courtroom collectively holds its breath. Jessica has just doubled down on her arrogance, suggesting that her driving skills somehow make it acceptable to endanger children. Judge Caprio's expression doesn't change, but veteran court watchers recognize the signs of a judge who is about to deliver the kind of education that this lawyer should have received in law school but clearly didn't. "Miss Montgomery," Judge Caprio says, his voice deadly calm, "the street appeared relatively clear to you because you were looking at your phone instead of watching for children. Your reflexes may be excellent, but the laws of physics don't care how confident you are. And having complete control of your vehicle doesn't give you the right to drive 28 miles per hour over the speed limit in a school zone." Jessica opens her mouth to respond, but Judge Caprio isn't finished. "Since you've chosen to argue legal technicalities instead of taking responsibility, let me address your objections one by one. And I want you to pay very close attention, Miss Montgomery, because you're about to receive the legal education that your expensive law school apparently failed to provide. Judge Caprio picks up a thick file that had been sitting on his bench. First, you question the calibration of the speed detection device. The officer's report includes certification that the device was calibrated on June 1st, 7 days before your violation, which exceeds the state requirement for monthly calibration. The certification is signed, notarized, and includes the serial number of the device. Would you like to see it? Jessica's face pales slightly. No, Your Honor, but second, you dispute the officer's vantage point. Officer Martinez has worked the school zone at Washington Elementary for 6 years. He was positioned at the intersection of Hope and 4th, which provides clear sight lines in all directions. His position is documented with photographs in the report. His testimony will confirm he had unobstructed view of your vehicle. Do you have evidence to contradict this? Your Honor, I simply meant. Third, you claim the school zone signage doesn't meet statutory visibility requirements. Rhode Island law requires school zone signs to be posted at each entrance to the zone and at intervals not exceeding 500 feet. The signs at Washington Elementary are posted at 200-foot intervals, more than double the legal requirement. They're 36 inches by 48 inches, reflective, and mounted at the standard height. Would you like me to provide you with the maintenance logs? Jessica's earlier smirk has completely disappeared. Your Honor, I. And fourth, Judge Caprio's voice becomes harder. You claim there's insufficient evidence to prove you were the driver. Miss Montgomery, the vehicle is registered in your name. You're listed as the primary driver on the insurance. Officer Martinez identified you through your license plate and confirmed your identity when he approached your vehicle and you signed the citation acknowledging you were the driver. Which part of that do you consider insufficient evidence? The courtroom is absolutely silent. Jessica stands frozen, her earlier confidence completely shattered, watching as Judge Caprio systematically dismantles every argument she thought was clever. But Judge Caprio isn't finished delivering this lesson. Miss Montgomery, since you're an attorney, let me share something with you about the law that you seem to have forgotten. The law isn't a game where the player with the most technical arguments wins. The law exists to protect people, including and especially children, from exactly the kind of reckless behavior you exhibited on June 8th. Jessica's voice is small now, all her professional arrogance stripped away. Your Honor, I apologize if you came across as Miss Montgomery. You walked into my courtroom with obvious contempt for this process. You laughed at other defendants' struggles. You texted during their cases. You rolled your eyes at an elderly man who could barely walk. And then you stood before me and tried to use your law degree as a shield against taking responsibility for endangering children's lives. Judge Caprio stands up from his bench, an unprecedented gesture that signals something significant is about to happen. He walks down from the bench and approaches the defendant's stand, looking directly at Jessica. Miss Montgomery, do you know why I became a judge? Jessica shakes her head, unable to speak. Because I believe in equal justice under law, not justice for the wealthy, not special treatment for lawyers, not one set of rules for corporate attorneys and another for everyone else. Equal justice. That means when you endanger children, you face the same consequences as anyone else who endangers children. And guys, if you're enjoying watching privilege meet accountability, if you believe that lawyers should be held to the same standards as everyone else, hit that like button. What Judge Caprio does next in sentencing this arrogant attorney will prove that in his courtroom, your credentials don't protect you. They make you more responsible for knowing better. Judge Caprio returns to his bench and opens his sentencing file. Miss Montgomery, here's my ruling. You're guilty on all charges: speeding in a school zone, running a red light, and distracted driving. Your fine is $1,500. Jessica's mouth drops open. 1,500? Your Honor, that's 3 times the standard. The standard fine is for people who show remorse, Miss Montgomery. You showed arrogance. The fine reflects that, but I'm not finished. Judge Caprio's voice becomes even more serious. Your license is suspended for 90 days. 90 days? Your Honor, I need my license for work. I have meetings, court appearances. You should have considered that before you drove 48 miles per hour through a school zone while texting. Perhaps taking the bus for 3 months will give you perspective on how the other half lives. Jessica's professional composure is completely gone now, replaced by genuine panic. Your Honor, please, I can't take the bus. My firm, my clients, my reputation, your reputation, Miss Montgomery, is exactly what we need to discuss. As an officer of the court, you're held to a higher standard than ordinary citizens. You took an oath to uphold the law, and then you broke it while simultaneously showing contempt for the legal system you're supposed to respect. Judge Caprio picks up another document. Furthermore, I'm referring your conduct in this courtroom to the Rhode Island Bar Association's disciplinary board. What? Jessica's voice cracks. You can't do that for a traffic violation. I'm not referring you for the traffic violation, Miss Montgomery. I'm referring you for conduct unbecoming an attorney. You showed contempt for court proceedings. You mocked other defendants. You attempted to use your legal credentials to intimidate this court. You displayed a fundamental lack of respect for the equal application of justice. That's not a traffic violation. That's an ethics violation. Jessica looks like she might faint. Your Honor, my career, my partnership track, everything I've worked for, Miss Montgomery, you worked very hard to get your law degree and build your career. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that being a lawyer is a privilege, not a license to think you're better than everyone else. Perhaps explaining to the disciplinary board why a sitting judge questioned your fitness to practice law will remind you of that. Judge Caprio's voice takes on the tone of a professor addressing a failing student. And one more thing, you're required to complete 100 hours of community service, not the kind where you work in a law clinic advising corporate clients. Real community service. You'll volunteer at Washington Elementary School, the school where you endangered children, helping with their crossing guard program every morning for the next year. You'll stand on that corner where Officer Martinez caught you speeding, and you'll protect the children you put at risk. Jessica's voice is barely a whisper. Your Honor, that's at 7:30 a.m. That's before my workday starts. Exactly, Miss Montgomery. You'll learn to wake up early to serve others instead of expecting others to accommodate your schedule. You'll learn what it feels like to protect children instead of endangering them. And maybe, if you pay attention, you'll learn some humility, but there's still more. Judge Caprio returns to his seat behind the bench. Until you complete every hour of that community service, your license suspension remains in effect. Miss even one morning at that crossing, and your suspension extends to 6 months. And I want weekly reports sent directly to this court confirming your attendance and attitude. Judge Caprio looks out at the courtroom, addressing not just Jessica, but everyone present. Let this be a lesson to every attorney watching, every professional who thinks their credentials make them special. The law applies equally to all. Your education doesn't exempt you. Your salary doesn't exempt you. Your important job doesn't exempt you. When you endanger lives, you face consequences. When you show contempt for the system, you face greater consequences. And when you're an officer of the court who should know better, you face the harshest consequences of all. He looks back at Jessica, who stands with her head bowed, all her earlier arrogance completely destroyed. Miss Montgomery, I hope that 3 months without a license, 100 hours of community service, and explaining your conduct to the Bar Association will teach you what your expensive law degree apparently didn't. that respect for the law isn't about knowing how to manipulate it. It's about understanding why it exists and who it protects. Court is adjourned. The gavel comes down with finality, but the impact of Judge Caprio's lesson is only beginning. As the courtroom empties, Jessica stands alone at the defendant's table, staring at the paperwork that outlines her sentence. The smirk is gone. The arrogance is gone. The contempt is gone. In their place is the dawning realization that her professional credentials just made her situation worse, not better, and that the next 3 months of her life are about to teach her lessons that law school never covered. Court officer James Wilson, who's worked with Judge Caprio for 15 years, approaches Jessica. Miss Montgomery, you'll need to surrender your license to the clerk's office and sign paperwork for your community service assignment. Jessica nods numbly, gathering her expensive briefcase with shaking hands. As she walks toward the clerk's office, she passes other defendants who are watching her with a mixture of sympathy and satisfaction, the same people she mocked and looked down on just an hour ago. Outside the courthouse, Jessica sits in her car, a BMW that she won't be driving for 3 months, and finally allows herself to cry. Not tears of sadness, but tears of humiliation and shame. Her phone buzzes constantly with messages from her firm asking why she's late to a meeting, from clients wondering where their documents are, from colleagues expecting responses to emails. She types out a message to her senior partner. I need to meet with you urgently about a personal legal matter. Then she calls an Uber because starting today, she doesn't have a license to drive herself anywhere. The video of Jessica's courtroom humiliation, recorded by the court's camera system and later released as public record, goes viral within hours. The hashtag #LawyerLearnsHumility trends on social media. Legal blogs and news sites feature the exchange as a perfect example of professional arrogance meeting judicial accountability. Law schools began using the video in ethics classes as a case study in what not to do. Even her own law firm's partners watched the video with a mixture of shock and concern about the reputation damage. Within 48 hours, Jessica receives a formal letter from the Rhode Island Bar Association's disciplinary board notifying her of an investigation into her courtroom conduct. The letter requires her to respond in writing, explain her behavior, and appear for a hearing. Her senior partner calls her into his office. Jessica, he says, his face grave. I've watched the video. The entire executive committee has watched it. We need to discuss how this affects your position at the firm. Jessica sits across from him, no longer the confident senior associate who walked into court expecting to argue her way out of consequences. I understand, she says quietly. I was arrogant and disrespectful. I showed terrible judgment. I embarrassed the firm and myself. The senior partner nods. Jessica, you're a talented attorney, but talent without character is dangerous. You're suspended from client-facing work until you complete your community service and the bar investigation is resolved. You'll work exclusively on research and document review. No court appearances, no client meetings, no representation of the firm in any public capacity. The first morning, Jessica reports to Washington Elementary School at 7:15 a.m. She's wearing jeans and a reflective safety vest instead of her usual designer suit. The crossing guard coordinator, a retired police officer named Mrs. Patricia Ramos, greets her with professional courtesy but not warmth. Miss Montgomery, she says, Judge Caprio's office sent over your paperwork. You'll be working the Hope Street crossing, the same intersection where you were cited for speeding. That's not a coincidence. It's intentional. Jessica nods, understanding the deliberate irony. Mrs. Ramos continues, you'll arrive at 7:15 every morning. You'll help children cross safely from 7:30 until 8:15. You'll do this Monday through Friday for the next year. Rain, snow, heat, cold, doesn't matter. The children need you here. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am, Jessica says quietly. The first few weeks are brutal. Jessica wakes at 6 a.m., takes the bus for 4 or 5 minutes if she can't drive, arrives exhausted at the school, and stands in the intersection helping children cross, including children who witnessed her speeding through months ago. The parents recognize her from the viral video. Some thank her for doing the right thing now. Others glare at her, clearly remembering she endangered their children. Jessica takes both reactions with growing humility. One morning, a 7-year-old girl named Emma approaches Jessica during crossing duty. "You're the lady from the video, aren't you?" Emma asks with childlike directness. "Yes," Jessica admits. "I made a very bad choice, and now I'm here to help keep you safe." Emma considers this. "My mom says everybody makes mistakes, but grown-ups have to fix them." That's what you're doing, right? Fixing your mistake? Jessica feels tears sting her eyes. "Yes, sweetie, that's exactly what I'm trying to do." 3 months into her community service, Jessica appears before the Bar Association's disciplinary board. She stands before 3 senior attorneys who have reviewed the courtroom video, read Judge Caprio's referral, and examined her response. "Miss Montgomery," the panel chair says, "you've completed 50 of your required 100 hours of community service. Tell us what you've learned." Jessica takes a deep breath. "I've learned that I was arrogant, entitled, and had completely lost perspective on why I became a lawyer in the first place. I thought my degree made me special when it actually made me more responsible for upholding the values of the legal profession. I showed contempt for people I considered beneath me when they were simply living their lives with different circumstances than mine. Every morning when I helped those children cross the street, I remember that I put them in danger because I thought my time was more valuable than their safety. That's inexcusable." The panel chair nods. "Miss Montgomery, based on your genuine remorse, your completion of half your community service without incident, and letters of recommendation from Mrs. Ramos and several parents at Washington Elementary, we're issuing a formal reprimand to be noted permanently in your bar file, but we're not suspending your license to practice. However, you're on probationary status for 2 years. Any further ethics violations will result in immediate suspension." Jessica completes her 100 hours of community service over the course of a year. On her final morning, the children at Washington Elementary, their parents, and Mrs. Ramos hold a small celebration. Emma, the 7-year-old who asked about fixing mistakes, presents Jessica with a handmade card signed by all the students. "Thank you for keeping us safe, Miss Montgomery. We forgive you." Jessica frames that card and keeps it in her office as a permanent reminder of the most important lesson she ever learned. Not from law school, not from her prestigious firm, but from Judge Frank Caprio and the children she once endangered. When her license suspension ends after 90 days and she can drive again, she never speeds, never texts while driving, and stops completely at every school zone. She volunteers to continue crossing guard duty 1 morning a week, even after completing her required hours. Years later, when Jessica is made partner at her firm, an achievement delayed but not destroyed by her mistakes, she gives a speech at a local law school's ethics seminar. She tells the story of walking into Judge Caprio's courtroom with arrogance and walking out with humility. She shows the video of her own humiliation, not to embarrass herself, but to teach the next generation of lawyers what she learned the hard way. "The law isn't about winning," she tells the students. "It's about serving. It's not about being clever enough to avoid consequences. It's about taking responsibility when you fail. And your law degree doesn't make you better than anyone else. It makes you more accountable to everyone else." Judge Caprio taught me that lesson in the hardest way possible, and it was the most valuable education I ever received. This case became one of the most watched examples of judicial accountability for professionals who think they're above the rules. Law professors use it to discuss legal ethics and professional responsibility. Traffic safety organizations cite it as an example of equal application of justice. And Judge Frank Caprio, in interviews about the case, always emphasizes the same point. Lawyers who show contempt for the law do more damage than ordinary citizens who break rules, because they betray the profession that's supposed to uphold justice for everyone. The story of Jessica Montgomery, the arrogant attorney who mocked the rules and received an epic lesson in humility, reminds us that credentials don't grant immunity from consequences, that professional success without character is hollow, and that sometimes the most powerful thing a judge can do is hold those who should know better to the highest standards of all. Jessica learned that being an attorney isn't about using your knowledge to escape accountability. It's about using your knowledge to serve justice, protect the vulnerable, and remember that every person who stands before the law, whether judge, lawyer, or ordinary citizen, deserves equal treatment under the rules we all agree to follow. And guys, in the comments below, tell us about times when you've seen privilege or credentials challenged by accountability. Have you witnessed someone who thought they were above the rules learn a hard lesson? Because Jessica Montgomery proved that no matter how expensive your suit or impressive your resume, when you endanger children and mock the system, justice will humble you in the most public way possible. If this story resonated with you, if you believe that lawyers should be held accountable just like everyone else, share this video with every law student, every professional, and everyone who needs to understand that respect for the law isn't about knowing how to manipulate it. It's about understanding who it protects and why it matters. Subscribe for more stories that prove Judge Caprio's wisdom, that justice means holding everyone to the same standards, that arrogance is always temporary, and that the most important lessons are often the most humiliating. And remember, the next time you think your credentials make you special, they don't make you above the law, they make you more responsible for upholding it.